Hey, Green Gobbler here. So you've got a clogged drain in your bathroom. Water in the sink's overstaying its welcome. You're spitting today's toothpaste on top of yesterday's toothpaste. You hope that it'd go away. Yeah, clogs don't just go away. I make them go away. I'm Green Gobbler, the only clog dissolver you need. I'm bleach-free, safe for your pipes, and I work. Guaranteed or your money back. 'Cause I never met a clog that was gonna unclog itself. Green Gobbler. Let the gobbler get it.
This is the famous footwear that makes us actually want to go back to school. With the newest styles from all your favorite brands, like Nike, Adidas, Crocs, Converse, New Balance, Birkenstock, and more. You'll find everything kids want, all at prices parents can appreciate. Because you don't have to overspend to make it famous. Famous Footwear even has fit experts in store to make sure you get the right size every time. So, for the perfect fit, make it famous. Plus, right now, buy one, get one half off when you shop your local Famous Footwear or famous.com. Some exclusions apply.
This is Jessica Knoll, host of the new series Back in Crime. If you're a follower of true crime, you're probably familiar with some of the most shocking stories from our history. Horrific tragedies like the Columbine Massacre and notorious criminals like Charles Manson. But what if we were to turn back the hands of time and relive these events as they unfolded in real time? Follow along each week as we take a fresh look at crimes from the past. Back in Crime is available now.
To get the Crime Writers on Aftershow right now, go to patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, for the first time, Network TV's biggest true crime personality brings his signature style to podcasting. We'll rewind to our 2019 review of the quirky classic from Dateline, The Thing About Pam. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca.
So I didn't do that in my Keith Morrison voice. I did that in the Renee Zellweger as Pam voice, which is not appropriate, I know.
Yeah.
But we are, in fact, talking about the Keith Morrison podcast from Dateline, not the miniseries with Renee Zellweger, right?
That's true. Yeah. I mean, the thing about Pam is that it like spawned all this other content. Originally, this is actually the recycling of the content from the original Dateline story.
And this was the first big Dateline podcast, right?
This was the first big Dateline podcast that wasn't
about
audio Dateline, right?
Yeah.
And so again, it went from there, and then of course we have the Renee Zellweger dramatization, all based on this. So we're going back to September 30th, 2019 for our review of the Thing About Pam, and maybe there's a cameo in this.
Fans of NBC's true crime staple Dateline will recognize the story of Pam Hupp. The primetime show has featured her case multiple times. Now they're doing a podcast-exclusive treatment of the story hosted by the unparalleled Keith Morrison.
Russ Faria was charged with a crime that he swore he did not commit.
No, I did not do this. I do not know how this happened. I did not do this. I was not involved with it.
Just after Christmas, Troy, Missouri, 2011. His beloved wife was brutally stabbed to death 56 times.
The jury was left with no alternative, and in most people's words, the husband did it. Who else would have?
Beginning in 2011 with the death of Betsy Faria, police zone in on her husband, Russ. Investigators are convinced of his involvement in part because of the damning stories passed on by Betsy's coworker and friend, Pam. But it's not an open and shut case, and Pam's motives are not altruistic.
Her exact words is, I advanced on the man and fired until I heard click, click, click.
We thought we knew how this story ended. How wrong we were.
You now have this money and have not turned any of this money over to the family or the kids.
That's correct.
That's a huge problem.
It's unbelievable.
This case is obviously a favorite of the Dateline team, some of whom became part of the story. But the star of the show is undoubtedly Morrison, who leans into his cheesy persona and adds, dare we say, a little bit of fun.
We wouldn't be here if the answer was that easy.
In my opinion, an innocent man got charged with murder, and then it sort of snowballed from there.
I'm Keith Morrison. I've been a correspondent for Dateline NBC for 25 years. And in that time, I've never seen a story quite like this before.
Now we are going to be talking about plot points through episode 5 of The Thing About Pam. So to remain spoiler-free, go to the time code listed in our show notes. Kevin Flynn.
Yes.
Keith Morrison. Go.
Okay, I got to say that I do not watch Dateline NBC.
Occasionally we do, but only if it's on. Like we don't appointment watch it, right?
We do not appointment watch it. We have good friends who podcast about it. And, you know, it does have a sort of kitsch, and Keith Morrison embodies that. And I think not having spent a lot of time with him, he really leans in to that persona in this podcast, and it works. I have to say, as horrible as it sounds, this is fun. It's fun to listen to him. It's more fun than even this weird case, is just to have him tell it.
What did you call him, Kevin? What was your nickname for Keith Morrison in this podcast?
He's like Murder Santa Claus. He's like, well, he was a bad boy, I think. Yeah.
Laura Bricker, Keith Morrison, go.
I love him, but now I'm hearing him everywhere. So this morning I was going out for a run into the woods, and I had just started reading this book about a woman who gets abducted while she's running. And all of a sudden it was like I could hear Keith Morrison narrating what was going to happen to me when my body was found in the woods. But I love it because, like, listening to it, it's just so easy to follow the story, and it's just, I don't want to call it it's entertaining to listen to it, just because of he drops those fun little asides and little editorial comments in from time to time, and I'm like, I'm like, good one, Keith. I just couldn't stop listening. I was like obsessed.
All right, Toby Ball, Keith Morrison, go.
He's fine, I guess. I find him more distracting than fun or helpful or whatever. I just get so thrown by his intonations and pauses in weird spots, and like Kevin said, he's kitschy. I mean, he's not my cup of tea. He does add sort of the fun factor, I guess. But I thought the strengths of this podcast weren't necessarily his narration.
Yeah, I mean, I am not like a Dateline fan except for the kitsch factor of it. I do love the Date with Dateline podcast. I think those ladies are brilliant, and they've basically pointed out to me all the stuff that's crazy about Dateline. But Keith Morrison's asides in this podcast freaking kill me. I love them. I love them so much.
Rebecca, why don't you drop some tape?
Okay, I'm going to drop some tape.
And Pam's voice was almost breezy as she ran through her routine.
Took care of my dog, fed him, walked him, got in the shower, and headed out. And I had to get gas. So I went
Walked the dog, got gas, used her loyalty card for her daily soda.
A real little one down the street where I go every morning and get my soda. And
you get one free after so many.
And of course, there's also his little literary aside.
And then we started watching this movie called The Road.
The Road?
Yeah, but it was boring.
Cormac McCarthy's The Road. Boring? Well, to each his own.
I think much of the audience that was lost on that.
Well, the other thing I want to talk about is the format of the podcast, because I will say, of all of the cases that we have talked about on this show that have been covered in podcasts, and we just talked about one in the first half of this show, I do feel like this podcast, in many ways, even if you hate Keith Morrison and don't love the delivery of it, is kind of a masterclass in telling a story and making it easy to follow. Yes. Like they're basically covering one aspect of the story in every episode. They're not being repetitious. It's just very, very focused. Laura, it sounds like you agree.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, they've been reporting on this. I was looking this up. This is, aside from O.J. Simpson and JonBenet Ramsey, this case is the case they have reported on the most on Dateline ever. They've covered it like 4 times. So, they probably have, I can't even imagine how much tape, how many interviews they've done. But to listen to this podcast, it's not that you wouldn't know that, but that's not like you're not getting, overburdened by too much information, because they're simply telling the story and doing it in a way that the story keeps flowing and it keeps going. And you've got enough information without having so much that you're getting bogged down in the story. So it keeps up the pace.
Flo from our Facebook group says, as a writer, I'm intrigued by the episode length because they managed to pack a lot to me, or so it seems, in compressed episode time, which makes the focus really singular on one wackadoo facet at a time. I'm not sure if every other podcast seems bloated now, or whether we're just out of the episode just when it's starting to cook. I don't know. It's making me question everything. So I guess not everybody agrees that it's super tight and super good, but that is something that stuck out to me. I edit Undisclosed, and they pack a volume of information into like an hour-long podcast. And as the audio editor, I'm just like, man, I wish you guys had included me in the script part, because I would just say like, this could have been 3 episodes. I do feel like this podcast is very efficient in that way.
You just got to tell them they could have made 3 times as much money.
Kevin, you have a bunch of notes that you sent me about the case itself, right?
Yeah.
The prosecution's theory of the original case. The
fuck with that?
Leah Askey, who's like, everyone's in on it. He left the house. He went back, had sex with his wife, like all that stuff. What do you think about that?
I thought it was crazy. It reminded me of the Garrett Phillips documentary, where they just sort of had it in their head that this is their guy, and so they're going to make everything else sort of fit that narrative. And the fact that, he's my alibi, no, that just shows he's your accomplice. And here's my phone call. It's like, no, you don't sound right in that phone call. And then the stuff with the cops where they did the inadmissible polygraph, but the video and the audio recordings both disappeared.
But you just have to trust me that it happened.
Yeah. And, they say, the camera malfunctioned, but it definitely took photos of blood trails and footprints, and no, it
just
didn't
trust
actually.
Me. Trust me, there's blood there.
No, actually, here is the stuff, and it shows, that there is no blood there. And, and that sort of thing that Dateline doesn't necessarily do an awful lot of. They're much more about, here's the bad guy, and we caught him. It's not the social justice thing where we're saying, hey, here's where the system went wrong, and somebody, was wrongfully accused. They don't do an awful lot of that.
One thing I really liked about this podcast, even though I think, and this is why I want to throw this Toby's way, there's something to sort of like pick apart here a little bit, is they do play Russ's 911 call, which is like allegedly the linchpin of the prosecution's case in his trial. And his call sounds like this.
Russell, what's going on there?
I just got home from a friend's house, and my wife killed herself.
Now, they just have the theory there that that's all fake, yada, yada, yada. But as we've discussed many times on this show, like, you don't know how you're going to be, right? But then later in the podcast, in episode 5, Pam commits another crime, and we hear her 911 call. I'm just going to play that tape.
Hey, hello, there's someone breaking in my house. Help. What's the address you're at? Help.
Toby, do you think it's fair game to say that her 911 call actually sounds like total bullshit? Or am I now being one of the bad guys who's drawing needless conclusions, based on my own biases?
You can be one of the bad guys, and it can also be bad shit crazy. I mean, I think the whole thing that kind of blows it, even if you're like, well, maybe somebody would just like pretend that they were acting badly about this tragic thing that happened, is when she waits until she's answered, and like otherwise it's silent, and then she doesn't realize that they're recording that part too. It's so obviously bullshit.
Help.
Yeah.
Help.
Oh, don't do that. The whole thing, yeah, it was kind of weird.
Especially when she said, and action.
It's like practice in front of the mirror a couple times. Just like get it down. Like I think it felt like she probably had a piece of paper in front of her It's like, okay, now pretend that, he's trying to drag you out. No, stop.
She cut a piece of rug out?
Yeah.
She put a piece of carpet on top of her clean carpet so she could shoot him on the dirty carpet.
That was kind of an homage to Pam Smart, right?
Yes, I forgot about that detail.
Yeah, they didn't want to get her new carpet bloody.
Now, Kevin, there's another case that this whole thing with Pam and the second murder that the podcast covers. It reminded me a lot of a book that you wrote. Pam trawled around a poor neighborhood looking for a hapless victim to use. I guess the plan was to frame Russ some more.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
I mean, it just shows like how obsessed Pam was with Russ and this money. She probably thought that the only way to convince people that she had nothing to do with Betsy's death was to somehow bring it back and show that Russ is a killer, which isn't the case. And she did remind me a lot of Sheila LaBarre. And I'm sure Laura, because you know an awful lot about that case too, the idea that all the neighbors knew who she was and they were afraid of her and the cops had a special code for whenever they had to get called to her house.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's just like Sheila.
Well, and I'll tell you, I have a fun story about Sheila. So the farrier that used to cut my horse's feet she had some horses out in Epping at her farm, and my farrier Bill had known her husband, the chiropractor, forever. So he was out there, trimming the horse's feet one day, and Sheila came like running out of the house going, "Bill, he's trying to kill me. He's trying to kill me." And Bill's like, "Yep, it's just Sheila." Because it was like totally bullshit, but she just did stuff like that all the time, like Pam was doing here.
But we should say Sheila was a serial killer, and if you want to read more about her, you can buy Kevin's book.
That's right. but if you
Wicked Intentions.
But if you get to the next episode of The Thing About Pam, you might find out that she is also a serial killer.
That's right. We don't know for sure that she isn't, although it sounds like she might be, right? Yeah. So I want to talk about a character in the podcast that, to me, is the closest to Laura Bricker of any character we've ever encountered in a podcast. And that would be our good friend, Carol.
Oh, no. She was short, chunky. She was actually wearing a scrub top, if I remember correctly. It was blue. Short blonde hair, and the look on her face, she had a permanent, grin, smile, it was just weird.
Weirder? She wasn't going anywhere. She just sat there, idling.
My dog, she's never growled in her life. She's growling, she's going crazy. So I walked down there, I was like, "Can I help you? You're kind of making my dog nuts." And she just kind of looked at me and she asked me the weirdest thing: "Do you babysit?" First thing I thought was, who asks a stranger, especially in a trailer park, if they babysit?
So Laura,
yes,
Carol points out that just because she lives in a trailer park does not mean she's stupid. And then she proceeds to do a whole fucking sting against this stranger who basically tries to pick her up, and she immediately knows that something's up. She immediately lures Pam into a camera trap in her property so she can get a license plate. She arms herself with a knife up the sleeve. She asks the right questions, and then she gets the fuck out of that car the minute she realizes something's going wrong.
Yeah.
Is she not Laura Bricker in that situation? Yes or no?
Oh, she is. She is. I love Carol. She's pretty awesome. So I was like, yeah, that's right. I would be doing the exact same thing. I mean, for example, this morning when I was having my Keith Morrison moment in the woods, I was like, okay, if somebody jumps out, where is a big stick I can fend them off with? So, yes, it was pretty awesome.
Kevin, what do you think about Carol?
I would say that I understand why Pam would think this way, because I never in a million years would believe that someone living in a trailer would have a high-tech security system. But, hey, good on her.
Toby, what do you think of Pam's trying to draw Kathy, the Dateline producer, into her scheme by impersonating her as she's trying to pick up victims for this murder she's planning? She literally baited Kathy on camera, say hi to Kathy, and then she's telling people in a fun, I don't want to say it's fun because obviously this is a nefarious person and real people died, but she's basically using the cheesy stuff that Dateline does that she's been privy to then try to lure in other people. That was nuts, right?
It's more meta than I was expecting.
Yes.
So I was actually I'm glad that episode dropped before we recorded, because up until that episode, I was like, I don't understand why we're spending all this time on this, because it's not really all that interesting. But then it suddenly got interesting in the last episode.
Kevin, do you like all the behind the scenes stuff of how they make Dateline that they're inserting into this podcast?
Yeah, I'm wondering like how much of it they need. I mean, certainly if there wasn't the say hi to Kathy aspect, then, you know, nobody really cares about what's going on behind the scenes, Keith. But
I do now.
We already got enough of you.
But I like when Keith is like, just for the record, we don't pay for interviews on Dateline.
I'm not going to pay somebody to do a 911 call.
And we never reenact 911 calls. That's just not what we do.
No. Yeah, no, I think that, you know, their inclusion is important, and it's good. It's fun. You know, this is what Dateline NBC does every week. They got a staff. They got people that fly all over the country looking for good true crime stories. And, you know, they're finally bringing some of that to the podcasting world.
Laura, one final question for you.
Yes.
What is wrong with these cops? They have a suspect at the beginning who is not a suspect, but who should be, because all signs point to yes with Pam. Yeah. Immediately, from minute one, she's the beneficiary of Betsy's money. Yeah. It's like everything points to her, right? I mean, is the idea that the cops are just so fixated on the husband must have done it narrative that they just can't look another way? Because we actually heard tape of the cops telling her what to do to make herself look less suspicious.
Yeah. No, that was the thing. As I was listening to this, I was trying to figure out, I'm like, she's like a little bit like Florida Man with some of her antics and the things that she does that she's getting away with. And I'm like, she's not like the world's smartest criminal here, but I feel like she got away with things a lot longer than she should have, because it's like you're listening to that thing about the life insurance and I'm like, beep, beep, hello, like what's happening? Why is nobody following up on, like, it just was like, she just talked her way out of it. But, you know, the part I loved was when, you know, speaking of that life insurance policy, again, I was just like trying to kind of figure out what is her deal. At first it's like, oh, well, Betsy wanted me to take care of the daughters. And then you had that other tape where she's like, no, I never said that. No. And I'm like, do you not know they're freaking recording you every time you go in? Like, are you that stupid? But I don't know, like, what's going on with her?
Yeah, I think we know what's going on with her. It's the thing about Pam. That's what's going on with her.
Yeah.
Kevin, final question before we do our review.
Yeah.
One of our listeners, Rebecca, asked in the Facebook group, do you think the thing about Pam should have had a different title? Because the title gives away part of the story.
Perhaps. I mean,
yes.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, different time.
Toby says yes. I just love the way Keith Morrison says her name. Pam. Or Pam. Or the thing about Pam.
There's a Seinfeld episode where like Kramer does that whole thing. He's like, Pam, 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 you know.
Toby sent me the supercut where he just does it for 10 minutes.
All right. Well, let's do what we do. I would like us to give our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews for The Thing About Pam, the new podcast from Dateline. But before we give our reviews, I want to give a chance for some special guests to give their reviews to this podcast.
Hi, everyone. This is Kimberly.
And this is Katie.
And we're from a podcast called A Date with Dateline. Rebecca asked us to come on and give a thumbs up or thumbs down review of Dateline's new podcast, The Thing About Pam, as if there was a possibility that we would give it a thumbs down.
I feel like we're a strange choice. Does she listen to us?
Does she know what we do here? I do feel like we're being set up a little, and we're going to rave about the podcast, and then they're going to cut to Rebecca and Kevin and Toby and Laura, and they're going to rip the podcast apart, and we're going to look really dumb. But the joke's on you guys, because looking dumb is our natural state, and we are very comfortable here.
Oh, yeah. Also, I hated it.
You're just going to be contrary for try to get
just
us
in case.
Yeah. You know that our show's called A Date with Dateline.
Yeah. We love all things Dateline, which means that we are by nature going to love this podcast.
So should people check out The Thing About Pam? Absolutely. Yeah. Why haven't they already?
A+++.
Oh, did we mention it's hosted by Keith Morrison, a man who GQ just called the granddaddy of true crime, a phrase that's both titillating and a little bit creepy? This podcast has a wrongful conviction, mysterious deaths, and a lady named Pam who is, spoiler alert, a leaky trash bag of a person.
Oh, gosh. Pam! 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 Pam!
She loves... You just had to sneak an Office reference in there.
I did.
Pam loves doing terrible things and having no consequences for them almost as much as we love Dateline and this podcast. So thumbs up to A Thing About Pam. I wish I had bigger hands. I have small hands, so my thumbs are small. But I wish I had ginormous Buster from season 4 of Arrested Development hands, and I could just give this giant thumbs up.
Your hands are just unnaturally small.
They really are.
They're like a child.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. I can't hold things. Coffee cups are a challenge.
Pencils.
Thank you guys for listening. You weren't listening.
Thank you for asking us to give a review, knowing that it was going to be fully biased.
And knowing that you guys are probably going to hate it, and we're going to love you anyways, and still try to convert you into the cult that is Dateline.
Yeah, that's true.
And yes, of course, those were our friends Kimberly and Katie from the Date with Dateline podcast, giving their take on whether or not you should listen to The Thing About Pam. So, Kevin, who's our next sponsor for this podcast?
We're sponsored by Roe. If you've heard of Ozempic or Wegovy, you've probably heard three things. They're effective, but they're expensive, and they're hard to get. Well, that's where Roe comes in. Through Roe, you can access prescription compounded GLP-1s with the same weight loss ingredient as brand name GLP-1s at a fraction of the cost. Roe has compounded GLP-1s in stock now. If you qualify, your medication ships in just 1 to 4 days. Don't have time to schedule a doctor's appointment? No problem. With Roe, you can see if you qualify from the comfort of your own home. So go to roe.co/CWO.
CWO.
Membership starts at $99 for your first month. Medication costs are separate. That's ro.co/CWO.
CWO.
Go to ro.co/safety for black box warning and full safety information. Compounded medication is not required to and does not receive FDA review or approval. Prescription only. The medication must be paired with diet and exercise modifications in order to achieve stated results. That's ro.co/CWO.
CWO. So, Kevin, who's our next sponsor for this podcast?
We're sponsored by Quince.
Quince, my favorite. Oh, my God, my favorite.
Yeah, so...
That's where this is from.
This is Quince?
Yes. I'm literally wearing a shirt from Quince right now.
It's short sleeve, though.
It's short sleeve.
But it's not really great for autumn. And now we need to make the shift. By the way,
yeah.
How was that summer we just got through?
Amazing.
Yeah, a little eventful. So now it's time to sort of put summer behind and move on to fall, which is always kind of a challenge, like for your closet.
Not for me when I have Quince.
You can get great deals on things like cashmere sweaters.
Hell yeah.
$50. Pants for every occasion, washable silk tops, and so much more. And the best part is that Quince items, they're priced about 50 to 80% less than similar brands, but they also work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes.
You know what I love?
I'm going to rub your shirt here.
This is like
in an appropriate place.
Lightweight, gauzy cotton shirt. I love that they show you like how much it would have cost elsewhere and like why they've priced it the way they price it. And so you know exactly why you're getting the value that you're getting. But then when you get it, you're like, this seems way more expensive. Their cashmere sweaters, by the way, gorgeous.
Make switching seasons a breeze with Quince's high-quality closet essentials.
Go to quince.com/crime for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/crime to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/crime.
Hey, Green Gobbler here. So you've got a clogged drain in your bathroom. Water in the sink's overstaying its welcome. You're spitting today's toothpaste on top of yesterday's toothpaste. You hope that it'd go away. Yeah, clogs don't just go away. I make them go away. I'm Green Gobbler, the only clog dissolver you need. I'm bleach-free, safe for your pipes, and I work. Guaranteed or your money back. Because I never met a clog that was gonna unclog itself. Green Gobbler. Let the gobbler get it.
Moving on. So, Kevin, this is a story you really wanted to sink your teeth into.
Yeah, just like I love sinking my teeth into a great meal from HelloFresh.
Oh, yeah, you do.
HelloFresh handles most of the prep, making dinner to the table easier and faster than ever. And it's especially important as we're getting ready to go back to school.
Yeah.
And, you are doing all sorts of things, rushing around, getting the kids to their after-school activities means less time to prepare for a meal. But HelloFresh's Build-A-Plate meals are designed to let every member of your household create their perfect plate. So no more making multiple dinners to satisfy everyone on just one meal with so many ways to enjoy.
Really?
Now, Rebecca, you know that we are about to head out on a business trip.
Yeah?
So we're going to be away from home for a couple of days. So what I did is I arranged for that week that we're away to get two-person meals.
Okay.
So that Teddy, who's going to be home house sitting and watching the dogs, he can make his own HelloFresh meals, right?
Yep.
So we know he's eating something good. He can prepare it himself. And to be honest, he probably can do both servings.
And Kevin, Teddy's a big kid. He's a grown-up.
He's a grown-up.
But if we had little kids, listen to this.
Yeah?
For a limited time, kids eat free.
Oh!
You can go to HelloFresh.com/CrimeWritersKids.
Crime Writers Kids.
To unlock this exclusive offer. 1 free kids meal per box for the next 2 months while the subscription is active. That's free kids meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/CrimeWritersKids.
Crime Writers Kids.
All right, so Laura Bricker, when it comes to you, is it thumbs up or thumbs down for you for The Thing About Pam, the new podcast from Dateline?
10 thumbs up for this podcast. Oh my God.
10.
I don't know. I loved this so much. I don't know why I loved it so much, but I was like, oh, I can't wait for another episode. And the thing that's awesome is they keep dropping episodes every few days, so you don't even have to wait like a whole week for the next one. So, I mean, by the time this comes out, when our podcast comes out, there may be even more episodes. So I love it.
What about you, Toby? Thumbs up or thumbs down for The Thing About Pam from Dateline?
If we had taped yesterday, it would have been a thumbs down. I seriously was listening to the story, and it was just like, this is just about a woman who just lies her ass off. And that's about it. But the most recent episode, I think, for me, saved it. So, it's sort of a tepid thumbs up. But the story gets weird in the most recent episode. It's super tight. I mean, they know how to write these things. So you're never confused about anything. You're always well centered in the story. So for all those things, I give it a thumbs up. But I'm not like a Keith Morrison aficionado, and I found him more of a distraction than a feature.
Well, Gemma from our Facebook group says, every time I listen to The Thing About Pam, my inner monologue is narrated by Keith Morrison for approximately 4 days, sometimes 5. I got to say, I'm with Gemma on this. I am a huge fan of this podcast. It's fresh. It's new. It's fun. It is like crack-like, addictive. Like, I have to say, it's very seldom because we listen to so many things that like I cannot wait. I'm like, oh, there's a new one today. I was so excited. My work wife, Maureen McMurray, I want to give her a shout out. She runs the podcasting unit at NHPR that's responsible for shows like Bear Brook and Patient Zero and Stranglehold and all this like serious content we make. And she posted on our Facebook group today, sorry in the dark, but Thing About Pam is the best podcast of 2019. We just love it. It's very water coolery. It's the kind of thing you can like, you want to listen to it and then talk about with people. It's kind of a fun community experience, kind of like what Dateline is for our friends who make Date with Dateline, So I really love it. Big thumbs up for me. They're using their TV assets really, really well. It's really well written. It's really good. And it is, even though it's about a gruesome topic, it is fun as hell. Big thumbs up for me. What about you, Kevin?
I'm also thumbs up. I think that the case is really interesting. It's got a lot of twists and turns, which is the kind of thing you want in a true crime case that you're going to be telling over several episodes. But I think obviously the feature here is the narration of Keith Morrison. He does make it fun and interesting. He brings it alive and elevates the storytelling. I think he really thrives in this podcast format because he does the thing that he does so well on television.
Oh.
Not the thing where he leans up against everything on camera.
Really?
But his narration, he's in on the joke. There is a wink between him and the audience, and he's having fun with it. And so, in a way, we are having fun with it. I can't wait to hear the rest of the episodes. I will definitely be watching the big Dateline television feature where they do all this as a television special and see which version I like best.
Wow, Kevin, that was fun.
That was definitely fun.
So I remember the first time I ever heard about the Thing About Pam.
Okay.
My friend Maureen, you know Maureen,
Yep,
right?
yep.
Audio tastemaker, really talented podcast producer, has actually worked on some of the best shows we've heard in the last couple of years. But I used to work with her at NHPR, right?
Yeah.
After she left NHPR, she texted me and said, I really love this podcast from Dateline called The Thing About Pam. And I was like, really? And she was like, yeah, you have to listen to it. And Maureen is like one of my favorite people because she loves high-low. Like she loves things that are, but she mostly likes, like she also like listened to Howard Stern growing up. Like she also likes things that are just well done, you know, for lack of a better word, like well done trash. Like I'm the same way. And she was like, you have to listen to this podcast. You're going to find it really compelling.
Yeah.
And that was like my first kind of falling in love with this kind of like genre from Dateline where they're just, this is what they do. So why wouldn't they be good at doing it here, right? Like in this medium. Because this is what they fucking do on TV every goddamn week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, so.
And also point out that this was the zenith of Toby Ball's
Keith Morrison tolerance?
Yes, exactly. Thank you for putting it that way. Yes.
He almost got it?
Yes, and then come down to Nadir, which is at the bottom.
He almost got it.
He almost got it.
He was like, oh, wait, maybe he is a journalist.
Yeah.
I think that he has a Keith Morrison appreciation from afar.
Yeah.
All right. Should we wrap it there, Kevin?
Yes.
Well, this show was recorded in Studio C, The Closet, in our New Hampshire basement, where we also add a pump of cherry to our giant convenience store sodas. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later.
Partners in Crime Media. If you're shopping while working, eating, or even listening to this podcast, then you know and love the thrill of the hunt. But are you getting the thrill of the best deals? Rakuten shoppers do. They get the brands they love with the most savings and cash back. And you can get it too. Start getting cash back at your favorite stores like Levi's, Fenty Beauty, and Macy's. And even stack sales on top of cash back. It's easy to use, and you can get your cash back through PayPal or check. The idea is simple. Stores pay Rakuten for sending them shoppers, and Rakuten shares the money with you as cash back. Download the free Rakuten app and never miss a deal. Or go to Rakuten.com to start getting the most bang for your buck. That's Rakuten.